Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to the Lynk & Co. 01. Let me ask you something. You take geography in school? Yeah, well, this is what happens when you meet at the halfway point between Sweden and China. Usually I don't like to waste your time with these drawn-out explanations about these cars because there's an important video we need to get through, but I think that this one requires a little bit more of an explanation. Lynk & Co. is a subsidiary and a joint venture between Geely and Volvo. Geely, in case you didn't know, they own Volvo and Lotus and a whole bunch of other brands. This brand was started as a joint venture between them a few years ago. And Lynk & Co. initially started appearing in several European markets. And the interesting thing about Lynk & Co. was, back in the day, their business model. Because there were 4 different ways that you could actually have a Lynk & Co. vehicle. You could lease one, you could subscribe to one for a fee, you could buy one outright, or you could something else. Okay, I just went through my notes. You could subscribe to have a Lynk & Co. vehicle, similar to the thing Volvo did, perhaps unsurprisingly. You could lease a Lynk & Co. You could, I just bumped myself in the mirror. You could rent one, or you could outright buy one. This idea didn't work all that well for Lynk & Co., which is why you can now just go into a showroom and buy a Lynk & Co. vehicle. And as part of a recent expansion of the Geely Group into Southeast Europe, we now have Lynk & Co. in Macedonia with the 01 crossover. Now there's one more important thing we have to say. I did mention that this car is part of a joint venture between Geely and Volvo. And I made the mistake of calling it, years and years ago, a Chinese car. The Lynk & Co. 01 is built in China. However, the company is headquartered in Sweden, right down the road from Volvo in Gothenburg. So I think that if I call it a Swedish car, nobody's going to be upset because we call Volvo Swedish and basically every Volvo is built in China now. Yeah, let's keep that between us. So let's get into the Lynk & Co. 01, ladies and gentlemen. So the Lynk & Co. 01, you might have noticed by now that it's a crossover SUV. And it is based on the CMA Evo platform, which also underpins the Geely Starray, which I drove before, the Volvo XC40, and the Polestar 2. And with this powertrain setup, the Lynk & Co. 01 is basically the equivalent to the Volvo XC40 T5. But we'll get into that later. Let's start with the styling. So in the front, you can see the daytime running lights, which are up on the hood, basically. They're called the Aurora daytime running lights because, I don't know if you've heard of long exposure photography, but if you were to take a picture of the 01 from high above while it's moving, it would look like an aurora. That's what the Lynk & Co. people told me. Right below that are the main beams and the high beams in there. Pretty standard stuff. Upside down headlights are everywhere now. And you can also see above the headlights and below the daytime running lights that little contrasting blue stripe. I say contrasting, the whole car is blue, but it is a different shade of blue compared to the rest of the exterior. It's a very distinctive front end. I actually quite like how it looks. And you can also see the Lynk & Co. badge on the hood. The daytime running lights themselves kind of put me in mind of the original Nissan Juke, except that they look way better. Not that that was a difficult thing to do anyway. Let's move it along to the side profile. It's a pretty standard SUV and crossover side profile. It's not any sort of coupe looking thing or whatever. You can see more of that accents, that blue. You can also see from this angle the blue accents on the wheels, which is something I'm not really used to seeing. Usually accents on the wheels are always red. You might remember the Cherry FX that had those. But I like the blue because it complements the exterior very well and it looks cool. Also, the wheels themselves look cool and they are 20 inches in diameter, which is again something we don't see on crossovers very much. How do they affect the ride? We'll find out later. Also, from this angle, you can see over there on the front quarter panel the charge port, because this is, after all, a plug-in hybrid vehicle. Next, we move it along to the rear end, where you can see that very interesting taillight design. The main taillight beams actually go vertically, whereas the turn signals and the rest of the taillight running lights are across the tailgate. You can also see the Lynk & Co. badge in the center, which is spelled out like is so trendy nowadays, but it is slightly narrower. It's not like across the whole tailgate. And the 01 badge and the dual exhausts down there, along with a diffuser. On the facelift 01, interestingly, this is a full-width light bar, but not on this car. So what do I think of the look of the Lynk & Co. 01? Honestly, it looks pretty great. Like, it definitely tries to differentiate itself from the competition with those interesting styling elements like the blue accents and the front end with its characteristic headlight design, and this rear end with the dual exhaust. It definitely has a lot of presence relative to what it is, a B-segment crossover, but it looks good. It definitely will look good in an urban environment like the one I live in, actually. Oh, and also you can see the reverse light in there in the center of the rear bumper. I apologize, by the way, for the dust on the car, but it's been raining like a motherfucker in my hometown, and there was no point washing the car because it would have been covered in dust again anyway. So now that we're done with the styling, let's move on to the practicality. All right, practicality time, starting with the cargo area. And of course, the key, which is massive. It integrates the Lynk & Co logo quite well. Thank you, autofocus. And basically the entire key is just one big Lynk & Co logo, sort of like the new Ferrari models. It's huge. And this is an activity key. You can't wear it on you like you can with some other activity keys, but it fits in the small pocket of your jeans, as I will now demonstrate. I know everybody's enjoying this angle. So here's the activity key. Here's the small pocket in my jeans. Boom. Fits just fine. Fantastic. So let's move it along. You have the buttons on the side of the key here. There's unlock. There's a huge space between lock and unlock for some reason. And over here you have the cargo area release, which we hold down. And there we go. Cargo area is now open. We have 466 liters of space in here, which is quite good for a plug-in hybrid SUV, because remember, the batteries have to go somewhere. It's pretty spacious. There's basically no lip here, so I can quite easily sit down and destroy my jeans because the car is covered in dust. You can see my equipment bags as well. It's very spacious, and the opening is quite wide, and it's pretty tall, so you should have no issues getting larger items here in the back. There's a false floor, which contains, among other things, your charging cable. There's a massive Harman Kardon Infinity subwoofer in the trunk, which actually doesn't take up any space, which is great. That usually never happens. Disappointingly, there's no way to fold the rear seats down from the cargo area itself, but that's okay. The car isn't all that big, so you can fold them down from here as well. And we have a roll away and roll back parcel shelf. And then when you're done, push one of the two buttons there. The other one is to close the tailgate and then lock the car, and you're done. Let's move along to the back seats in the Lynk & Co 01. First of all, these seats are absolutely wonderful. And they're not cloth, as they may seem. They are, in fact, as it so proudly proclaims here, regenerated nylon. I have no idea how nylon can be regenerated, but I'm assuming that some recycled materials are involved here. Anyway, let's step in. So I noticed this the other day when I was testing out the back seats off camera. They're very low. So I sit pretty high anyway in the driver's seat, and in here it feels like I've just slumped down a fair bit, but there's a lot of leg room. As you can see, this seat obviously is in my driving position, 5'11" and a half, or 1.8 meters tall, and a Discord admin in width, but hopefully not for much longer. You can also see this lovely regenerated nylon sort of pad on the seat and the Lynk & Co badge in this lovely brushed metal effect trim. There's a extendable rear storage area. There's your door panel with a little bit of storage. The heavily tinted rear windows. This would be a complaint, but you do have a panoramic sunroof, which I will open for you in just a moment. The floor is relatively low, so you shouldn't have any issues getting people in the middle seat. This is also a pretty wide car, so no issues there. Rear climate vents, 2 USB ports, one C and one A. I need to stop smirking because it's probably annoying for all of you. And that's really about it. So let's get the other angle into the room. So here's the alternate angle. I'm sitting up. Legroom, as I showed you, fantastic. The headroom is pretty good, even with the panoramic sunroof and the sunshade closed. Now these seats have pretty significant contours on them, but still, let's try the middle seat, see what happens. Yeah, this is fine. I don't think it's robbing too much room from the middle passengers. So this is all pretty standard stuff and very spacious relative to what it is. And if you fold down the armrest here, you have a couple of cup holders as well. Now we move on to the front. Obviously this car has a keyless entry system. There's a little Lynk & Co logo there on the door handle. I just locked it by accident, but you push that to lock the doors, and then you pull the door handle to unlock the doors. Did I say unlock the doors with the ridge? No, you lock the doors with the ridge. Anyway, I can't speak for some reason. Here's the interior of the Lynk & Co. 01. You might have noticed the acres of blue all over the place. So the seats are partially blue, and you have lots of blue stitching. Actually, two different colors of blue stitching, one darker, one brighter. And you have a whole bunch of that stuff on the door as well. And this is much more premium feeling than I was expecting. So let's go ahead and climb inside. And now we are inside the Lynk & Co. 01. Let's go ahead and start with turning it on. I bet you're happy that I'm not wasting your time anymore with explanations how to start it. The first thing that greets you is the big driver's display here behind the steering wheel. It starts up in electric mode every time, but if I rev it up, nothing happens. There we go. Now the engine is running because I activated the generator mode. There's a lot of blow-off valve noises, which I was not expecting. So, the Lynk & Co. 01 has this 3-spoke leather steering wheel here. That's the other thing that greets you when you get in. It's very nice. It's thick. It's not the softest in the world, but it's also not the hardest. You have some contours here, which is nice. These pretty hefty grip extensions here with the blue stitching on the inside. Cruise control and various other commands, and your media controls, and this D-pad is for that part of the gauge cluster. The Lynk & Co. inscription on the airbag cover, which has its own little facets, which is nice. A bit of silver work there, and in the middle we have the horn, which sounds like this. The plug-in hybrid version of the Lynk & Co. 01 uses a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission controlled through this very nicely designed shift lever. And because this is a Geely Group product at the end of the day, the shifter has a single step, so you have to push down twice to go into drive. If you push it down again, you go into B, or braking, because being a plug-in hybrid, the Lynk & Co. 01 has regen braking. We'll talk about that during the driving section of the video. The interesting thing is this shifter, as well as moving up and down, can move left and right. If I push to the left, we're in manual mode and the engine has now started because it's getting ready to shift gears. You push it to the left to downshift, and you push it to the right to upshift, which makes not the most sense to me, if I'm honest with you, but it works. And then when you go into reverse, you get the 360-degree camera system on the screen there. And then for park, you push the P, and that's the end of that. This is the Lynk & Co. 01's infotainment system. Well, frankly, it's difficult to keep up with these screen sizes. Here's the screen size. And it is all very nicely built and pretty easy to navigate. Sometimes it can be just a little bit confusing, but once you get used to it, it is very easy, and it feels very polished with very clean graphics and no grammatical errors. You push this down for a few shortcuts and notifications like an Android device or indeed an iPhone, but the notifications on iPhone are way worse. And you have a bunch of pinned items here. So you have the power flow to show you your hybrid system details. You have two options here. You can save your battery to use it later, or you can activate that option, which makes the engine run all the time to save you some battery and actually charge the battery, and some tire pressure and your trip statistics there. This here is a home button, so if you're in any menu here, you just push that and it brings you back to the home screen. This is your trip statistics with a graph, which is very useful, and your media. Right now it's on the radio, but if you connect your phone via Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, that's what it will show there. By the way, not only does this car have native Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you don't need a separate app to use them, which is great. Your phone, your media, your apps, you can download a bunch of new apps if you have an internet connection, and there's a bunch of random items here, including a web browser, which is great. And for some reason, let's chat. I don't know how that would work, but okay. Well, this is your selfie camera. I don't know why you would need this. Maybe to keep an eye on the kids in the back. But you also have a dash cam. And you can take videos or pictures with it. There's an option to put in an SD card if that's what you want to do, but otherwise it saves it on the system's internal storage. All of your standard stuff here. This is your voice commands. That's how you activate them. There's your heated steering wheel, your temperature, heated seats. That shows the status of the climate control, and your user settings. Now, this being a pre-facelift Lynk & Co. 01, it actually has a few physical climate controls. The facelifted one does not. It just has a bigger screen, which sucks. But anyway, here's your temperature dial. A nice little detail is that the halo around it glows a different color depending on where you turn it. And if you push sync, my fingers look horrible right now, I'm sorry. If you press sync, it syncs the temperatures for both sides. That's your fan speed over there. Standard stuff. Here's your front defrost, rear defrost, air conditioning, automatic mode. That's a wireless charger for your phone. Here's the shifter that you already saw. The drive mode. We'll come back to the drive modes momentarily. The electronic parking brake, the hazards, the auto hold, and the media controls, volume, pause, and play. And over here, you have my microphones. No, I'm kidding. You have the cup holders. That's your center storage area. And that's about it for the center control stack, along with its wonderful stitched leather inlays. It's not a floating center console, interestingly. I know the Chinese love doing that. Well, you get what I'm trying to say. But and Volvo does it as well, but nope, not here. It's not a floating center console. So let's move along to what's in front of the driver. At the moment, the gauge cluster is running the classic theme. You can change the theme by going into the menu here on the right. You have 3 different themes to choose from. There's classic, which is my personal favorite, with the retro style numbers following the arc of the speedometer. There's vivid, right here, which I cannot stand. I don't really like the look of it. And there's clear. And this is Blaze, which was the theme that it came with when I first got the car a few days ago. I didn't like Blaze very much, so I'm going to put it back to Classic and we can move along with the rest of the gauge cluster stuff. So on the left side of the Classic display, you have the speedometer and your 3 different driver assistance systems, ranging from your speed limiter to your adaptive cruise control and highway assist, which according to the little steering wheel graphic right there, I assume can auto steer and change lanes for you. On the right, you have a screen that shows you, an out of focus one, sorry. You have a screen that shows you what the hybrid system is doing at any given moment. You can use the up and down arrows here on the right spoke as buttons, or you can swipe with capacitive controls. I like that they gave us the option to choose between those. This is your map functionalities. The car insists on starting with the map enabled, but you can hide it if you so choose. If you move further down, you have your media. You have your trip odometer, the trip 1 and trip 2, obviously. Your phone-related settings, and that's about it. And one thing that's cool, when you change the temperature of the climate control, it shows up in here as well. And that's really about it for that. On the left spoke, you have cruise control-related stuff and the distance control here, and voice commands. Behind the steering wheel, you have the requisite Volvo and Geely turn signal stock. Pretty standard. And you have your fog lights here, and the reset button at the end with a slightly different font. The wiper stock is also straight off a Volvo or a modern Geely with the rear wiper controls at the end, like so. Down here, you have dashboard dimmer switch, your combination fuel door and charge port button. You press this once to open the fuel door and you hold it down to open the charge port, and your tailgate release. It's also fairly easy to find a comfortable driving position. There's plenty of adjustment here in the steering wheel for... That sounded painful. For reach and for height. It is manual, but the driver's seat is fully powered, and it has memory settings. On the driver's door, you have your power windows. They go down very slowly if you don't push them down all the way. Interesting. You have your power mirror controls, and they also took this from Volvo. If you press left and right at the same time, the mirrors will power fold in and out. Those are your power locks, obviously. This stitched leather armrest with this blue and slightly different blue stitching. And in terms of interior features and content on the Lynk & Co. 01, that's about it. So let's go ahead and move it along to the quality and the storage. So in terms of the interior quality, I am thoroughly impressed. The Lynk & Co. 01 genuinely feels like a premium vehicle. So I already mentioned the stitched leather. How have I not missed you? There's another one. There's the stitched leather armrest that I already mentioned, but you also have more stitched leather here across the door panel. This is a little bit harder, but it's still relatively soft. There's more stitched leather here on this little piece of trim that covers up the gauge cluster to shade it from the sun, obviously. Some more softer touch materials in a honeycomb pattern all across the dash. There's more padded leather on the center console, which is great for resting your knee while you're driving. All of the switches feel high quality and well put together. There's no flexing or creaking of any kind. It all feels like a premium vehicle. Then again, the Lynk & Co. 01 in Macedonia carries a premium price, so it better. I'm also a huge fan of the textured plastic trim here and this fun little camo pattern on the dash. And the more stitched leather. That made absolutely no grammatical sense, but you understood what I mean. And it continues very nicely into the door panel itself. You know what else makes it a premium product? The Harman Kardon Infinity sound system, which is a bass bomb. It sounds brilliant. Anyway, moving it along to storage, there's a big door pocket for a large bottle and some other stuff if you have those. No storage here next to the driver's knee, disappointingly. There's the wireless charger that I showed you. There's two decently sized cup holders in here. There's a center storage area, which is full of garbage right now. And by garbage, I mean 2 cables and a microfiber cloth. And this button here, the unlabeled one, that opens the glove box Go away. That opens the glove box rather gracefully. And that is your storage in the Lynk & Co. 01. Here's your sun visor. If you can see it because it's too close, there's the sun visor with its illuminated mirror. There's the auto-dimming rearview mirror. It's frameless, which is nice. Your overhead lighting controls here, that's your individual reading lights that turns them on, all of them. And your sunroof. You push it back to open the sunshade and to open the sunroof itself, and by pulling down like this or pushing upwards, you can tilt it. And here's what it looks like. Almost fully. The sunshade is not fully open, but that's your sunroof. And that covers the interior. Oh, there's some ambient lighting as well. So I don't like to dive into the settings of the infotainment systems usually because that wastes a lot of time. But I need to show you this because I've never seen it before. Look at this. You have a whole RGB hex pattern here. You have the hex code of the color you can put it in. That's amazing. What was that? Yes. Mrs. Korr is in the back seat right now. She's a graphic designer and she approves of this. As I said before, the Lynk & Co. 01 in Southeast Europe is only available as a plug-in hybrid. You might have been able to see by all the orange cables about the place. What do we have here? We have a 1.5-liter turbocharged 3-cylinder gasoline engine with direct injection. Turbocharged 3-cylinder. And there's a bus. This is a bus stop, I'm just remembering. All right, before the bus interrupts us, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the powertrain in the Lynk & Co. 01. What we have here is a lot of unused space and a 1.5-liter turbo 3-cylinder gasoline engine with direct injection, also known as the TD, which was developed jointly by Geely and Volvo. The engine by itself makes 180 horsepower. One of these days, the engine by itself makes 180 horsepower, but then it's paired up with an 80 horsepower electric motor, 81 horsepower rather, and a 17.6 kilowatt hour battery pack for a total system output of 261 horsepower and 69 kilometers of range, electric-only range on the WLTP cycle. Nice. According to the WLTP cycle as well, the combined fuel economy is just 1.2 liters per 100 kilometers of driving. Usually I mention this in the driving portion of the video, but one, I wrote it down finally. My cameraman just left me. One, I wrote this down in my notes finally, and secondly, it's really important because this is a plug-in hybrid. 0 to 100 kph takes 7.9 seconds, and the top speed is this much. So what's this engine actually like? Let's take the Lynk & Co. 01 out for a drive and find out. Oh, by the way, this hood does not have a hood release on the outside. You have to push you have to pull the latch twice on the interior, and then you just open it, and it has hydraulic struts. Genius! Thank you so much. So let's get into it, ladies and gents. What is the Lynk & Co. 01 like to drive? And we're going to start, as we normally do, with town driving, which in theory should be an area of excellence for the Lynk & Co. 01 because it is a plug-in hybrid. Now, as I already explained, there are 3 different drive modes. There's pure, which means pure electric power. There's hybrid, where the electric motor and the engine will both figure out the best way when to work. And then there's power, which gives you full internal combustion power all the time. In town, I used both pure and hybrid because there are areas where one would be more useful than the other. I imagine for a lot of people that would also be the case, but there are some interesting things that I found out. For example, the pure drive mode, yes, you're driving in electric power the whole time, but it doesn't behave like a full electric car, so to say, because the motor is very small. It only has 81 horsepower. It also doesn't respond to throttle inputs like a typical electric motor in an electric car. The throttle response is a little delayed, but not like in a bad way, but because this is a plug-in hybrid, and you know, people who would buy this car, I imagine, would also be used to a gas engine, a pure gas engine without any electrification. So I think that the Lynk & Co engineers just delayed the throttle response on the electric motor slightly to make it more manageable for town driving. But driving the Lynk & Co 01 in electric power alone is actually kind of fun, because even though it doesn't behave like an electric motor in the throttle response sense of the word, the acceleration is still very linear. You're not exactly waiting for like a turbo to kick in or whatever. It's still a linear acceleration curve, and it's actually a lot of fun, especially around corners and stuff. We'll get to that, don't worry. In hybrid mode, like I already explained, the engine and the electric motor are working in tandem, and the car decides which one will work at a given time. And there's the typical plug-in hybrid stuff you'd expect, like when you let go of the brake, the car tends to switch back to the electric motor, and then when you floor it, it goes into the engine. You know, it taps the engine, and the engine provides most of the acceleration. They work in tandem with one another, and in my experience, the system is very well balanced. And also, the sound of the engine, because it's a 3-cylinder, is kind of fun. And I know I'm gonna have people wondering, oh, but it's a 3-cylinder, doesn't have enough power. Don't worry, it has plenty enough power, especially when they're both working together, like in the power drive mode. And also, let's be real, 0 to 100 kph in 8 seconds isn't exactly that slow. It's perfectly adequate for this type of vehicle. On the highway, no complaints. The engine is very responsive. The hybrid system works well on the highway. There's very little wind noise. I think this is the best sound insulated Chinese/Swedish car I've ever driven. There's hardly any wind noise. There's a little bit of road noise, but you kind of expect that. This car was on winter tires after all. And I've already said so many times about the quality of the roads in Macedonia. So no complaints about the highway. It's all very nice and very well balanced. Now, I know I mentioned earlier the fuel consumption of 1.2 liters per 100 kilometers of driving with a full battery. And if you let the car decide which part of the powertrain it uses at what given moment, you can easily achieve that fuel economy figure, as I did myself. So, very impressive. As for cornering abilities, well, I mean, the Lynk & Co 01 isn't exactly set up for handling, and you can kind of tell, but it's not bad. It doesn't feel unsafe. It does lean a little bit in the corners, no surprise. It's very heavy. It weighs like 1.8 tons, which is only slightly less than my Citroen C6, which is a full-size luxury sedan, but it does do a decent job of hiding its weight. It does roll in the corners, like I said, but the steering is very direct and responsive, and it doesn't feel unsafe. It's good to drive in the corners, but I'd hesitate to call it fun. Although, it does get a little bit of fun if you drive around corners in electric power. If you switch to pure because of the linear acceleration, it's actually a little bit more fun to drive in the fully electric drive mode. But overall, the experience behind the wheel of the Lynk & Co 01 is pretty fantastic. And that really summarizes the whole experience with the Lynk & Co 01. It's a fantastic SUV, and it is a genuine premium product. Well done to Lynk & Co. This is very, very good, and I can't wait to try out the rest of the Lynk & Co lineup, which will arrive in Macedonia soon enough, to see what else they have come up with. In the meantime, the Lynk & Co 01 plug-in hybrid gets a score of 9 out of 10. And that's going to be about it for this video, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Follow the community tab for updates on upcoming videos, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.